To all those above me that watch over me, to all of you, my fave parapeeps on this side of the veil, welcome. This is the Paranormal Ministry. I'm your host, Shawn Whittington. I'm a seminarian in the United States Old Catholic Church, and I'm coming to you live from my haunted home where I live. And I got a great show today. You're going to love my guest. She's one of my favorite people on the planet. And she's in the green room, and she will be right out here very quick. First, let's check the prayer urn. Pete C. from Colorado. My co-producers live in Colorado. Maybe they know you, P, but I don't know your last name. I'm a baptized Catholic, received First Communion and confession, just graduated high school. Well, God bless you, brother. A public school, okay, not Catholic school, huh? Thinking about the seminary too. So you must know that I entered the seminary. But I'm way past high school. I'm 62 now. So who enters the seminary at 62? Can you say a prayer for me? You know, brother, you're going to make me cry. Yes, Pete, I will absolutely say a prayer for you. And as far as recommendations go, I don't regret having done it. Of course, you have much more life ahead of you than I do. You're just a young man, but it's win-win situation. Whether you wait a little bit or go right into the seminary, if that's really your calling, and you'll know if it's your calling or not. Just keep talking to God, um, and you'll find out. But I will say a prayer for you. Okay. Name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, send workers for your harvest, so that the precepts of your only begotten Son may always be obeyed, and his sacrifice be everywhere renewed. Look with favor upon your family, and ever increase its numbers. Enable it to lead its sons and daughters to the holiness to which they are called, and to work for the salvation of others. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. All right. I wish you the very best of luck, Pete, and you're on the prayer list, and I will check in with you from time to time to find out what your decision is. And reach out to me anytime if you want to ask anything about that. God bless you. Thank you for the question. Let's check the Paranormal Ministry mailbag. Bobby L. from Illinois. Is there any way to break a family curse? I believe a curse was put on my family many years ago. I'm the last surviving member of my immediate clan and would like to break it. Okay, I've got good news and bad news, Bobby. The good news is you I get the feeling you're a fighter, and that's what you're going to need to do is fight. The bad news is it's very hard to break family curse, transgenerational curses, family curses. The thing is unfortunately you can't go back to when the deed was done and undo it. All you can do from this time is change your life, stay strong, stay blessed, and continue to fight. So you didn't ask for this, but I'm going to say a prayer for you too. Two prayers in one show opening. I think this is called for, though. I think I need to say this prayer for you. I don't know if you're Catholic or Christian. If you're Christian, if you're Catholic, then you know you need to start on a weekly basis. Confession, Mass, receive communion, be the best version of yourself you can be every day. Pray a lot and just be a fighter. If you're Christian, um, find a good non-denominational Christian church or a Christian church that does baptisms. Get baptized, full submersion in the holy waters, and then start attending their services. And they churches like that, all churches for that matter, have a support groups too. Enter a Bible study group or a support group, other people that have had issues with the supernatural in their life, and it will do you good. Okay, here we go. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. I ask Jesus to bind in his most precious blood any and all evil curses, pacts, spells, seals, hexes, vexes, triggers, trances, vows, demonic blessings, or any other demonic bondages set against Bobby or myself or any of our loved ones or any of our possessions. I ask him to bind them all and break them. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Okay. Reach out to me anytime, Bobby, if you want to talk about any more issues regarding this matter. But you know what? I'm going to also light a candle for you, Bobby. Bobby, may the Holy Spirit enter and intervene in your life and remain with you on this journey and on into the next. Amen. Bobby, your candle will burn here with me for the remainder of the show. When the show's done, I will take it in and put it in the room with all the other candles that are burning for other people. Okay. All right. Anything you want to know about my wife and I and our ministry work, go to our website, www.ghost-b-gone.biz. And if you go there to visit, there's a lot of cool things to see. Keep in mind, my wife and I don't charge for our ministry work, helping people with their paranormal issues. So I know times are tough, but if you notice the donate button and you're able to do so, click on it and send in a small donation. I promise you it'll be appreciated from the bottom of our hearts. And trust me, we'll put it to good use. Don't leave the website without navigating over to the page called the WSE course/book. On that page, you'll find the ghost store. Lots of cool things to buy in there if you go for that sort of stuff. But scroll down a little further on that page, you'll see my new haunted autobiography, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. And I quote, scariest book I ever published. That was Annette Munich, owner of Stellium Books, my publisher. But don't let that scare you off of purchasing a copy. If you haven't done your good deed for the day yet, part of the proceeds of every sale of every copy of my book goes to support stjude.org, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Nevada, and the ASPCA. So you get to help some of the most neediest children on the planet and the animals too. How cool is that? You can get the book a little less expensive on Amazon. You can get an autographed copy off of the website, and that will come to you in a house blessing kit if that interests you. And now is a great time to purchase the first book because God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry 2, Chronicles of an American Exorcist, comes out in November. So there are some stories in one that I left open ended because they weren't closed cases yet that I bring closure to and talk about in book two. So this is a great time to get the first book, get all caught up before you, um, God willing, purchase the second book. Word of warning: the second book I upped my game and talked about a lot of cases and stories that I thought I would never share, but colleagues in this field urged me to do that to, so to speak, get that monkey and that bad energy off of me and get that out there and share these stories with people. So that will be coming out in November. Scroll a little further down on that page, you'll see the Worldwide Society of Exorcists, which I'm a founding member. I offer a 12-week online college level course, Introduction to Spiritual Warfare, through the WSE. And that is a course for all you true warriors for Christ that feel a calling and a longing to want to have more knowledge when it comes to drawing your line in the sand, making a stand, circling the wagons, and putting up a good fight against, God forbid, true evil if it ever comes calling. That's the course for you. You can enroll in the course at the website, or if you would like more information about the course before making that type of commitment, you can go to the Worldwide Society of Exorcists Facebook page and read about the course. Or just call me. I'm approachable, I'm easy to get a hold of. Call me and talk to me about the course if you would like to before making that type of commitment. But most importantly, please keep all of my. Oh, let me let you know also know that uh, All my students that graduate get a stunning diploma, certificate of completion, suited for framing. It's beautiful, along with some other very special, blessed gifts that you can only get from yours truly. So, but please keep all of my former, current, and future students in your prayers. Thank you very much. Okay, the reason why you all tuned in, and let me thank you all for tuning in and spending an hour out of your busy Friday afternoons to spend with me and my guest, because I don't have a show without all of you. So God bless you all for tuning in. And without further ado, the reason why you all tuned in, like I said, she's one of my favorite people on the planet, and she's the creator of rogueways.org and the host of Rogueways. She's just really cool, and we're going to have a good time. So please welcome to the show the one and only Lindsay Sharman, aka Don't Squeeze the.
Nice to see you, Shawn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Well, last time we were on, I told you have fun because I'm going to want to have you back. You said you had fun, so I reached back out to you and you accepted. So that rule goes for every time you're on to have fun because I'm going to want you back again.
Yeah. Well, you make it easy, so.
You have a lot of fans and followers, and every time this show has taken on a life of its own. Whenever I do start announcing who's going to be on the show, like a couple of days before Friday or Saturday for the Monday show, people always start reaching out to me excited for that guest and sending me questions. So, I mean, some of the questions I've got are sent to me from fans and followers of yours. So we'll do that. And I have a funny story for you. Um, I put just a big picture of you on one of my Facebook pages announcing that you were going to be on. And I I shouldn't assume it was an older woman, but I think it was an older woman. And I called you the Rogue Warrior. And this person sent me a little message. Oh, how could you call that nice young lady a rogue warrior? She looks too sweet to be a rogue warrior. I just sent her a message back joking, like, you don't know her like I know her. And I
Yeah.
said, no, she's
You've
just,
seen nothing.
I told her Rogue Ways, the show, yada, yada, yada. That's why. So the lady said, oh, I get it now. Well, I'll be tuning in. So whoever you were, um, hello, thank you for tuning in. But yeah, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to try not, I'm probably going to ask you something that I've already asked you. And
I
if
won't
you end up,
remember anyway, so.
if you end up talking for the whole hour and I just sit here, that is totally okay with me because nobody tunes in for me anyhow. But I'll tell you the reason why I'm about to ask this question of you is because right now that seems to be 99% of the people that are reaching out to me are people that have had really tough, ugly lives in terms of their spirituality, um, having been down all the wrong roads, drug addiction, addiction to pornography, being overly promiscuous, um, studying witchcraft, which came back to bite them on the you know what, um, thought about suicide, can't find a job, just and on and on and on, feel like they're cursed and they want to get out of that. Um, I know you've had a story your story is amazing.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, I would like you just to introduce for all the people that don't know your story, bring them into that world and talk to people about your story, all your struggles and where you got to today, very successful podcast, video cast, website, author, successful at everything that you're doing now. And so I'm just going to throw the floor to you now and let you help all of those people that I really believe you have a lot in common with.
Yeah. I'm really glad actually to share this part of my story because, when I was in that dark place and as I was struggling through with all of these various, levels of mental illness and addiction and abuse and chaos, I didn't necessarily have a lot of examples of people who seemed similar to me who had then gotten out of that themselves. All of the people who kind of would talk to us when we were young about like, don't do drugs and look what happened to me and look where I'm at now. I just didn't relate to these people, and especially often they were talking about, Jesus or coming to Jesus and coming to Christ and that being part of their recovery. And I definitely didn't relate to that because there was a strong penchant then, and I feel like there still is today, of this almost anti-Christian sentiment. So that would immediately just sort of turn me off. And I'm like, oh, you're nothing like me. And that's not my story. Right. So I like sharing these parts of my story because I think it will help at least some people who can relate to it and look at me and go, okay, I mean, that person's at least somewhat similar to me. Right. And
Yeah.
maybe I can do it too. But I kind of started off pretty poorly. We were literally very poor. We were living in poverty. We were sometimes homeless. My family life, my mom and my dad really loved each other. They genuinely did. And my father was exceptionally disturbed, most likely from having killed way too many people in Vietnam as a sniper. That's at least a big part of it.
I didn't
Then
know
he
that part of your story. See, I'm learning something new too.
There's more layers all the
and
time.
my father too. My father, 25-year retired Master Chief Radio Man. He served in Korea, World War II in Korea, naval intelligence. So I feel you there, but I didn't know that about your father.
Yeah, he was deeply disturbed by it, and in fact, I'm sure in part to deal with that level of horror that he was forced into, like so many people who were drafted. He, picked up the heroin uh, habit. It's cheap and easy there, and it's numbing, and it gets you away from all of this. So, in addition to whatever other drugs they were all doing, heroin became a drug that he used. So when he came back from these 2 tours, which is its own big story, he was addicted. I always say to his credit, he kicked heroin. That's hard to do. I mean,
Oh my
that's
God.
nearly impossible to do. And there was not the
Yeah.
clinics and the support and back then there was nothing. He locked himself in an attic until he sobered up and he never went back again.
Wow.
So that's to his credit. However, we all know
Where were you during that? The locking in
I
the
wasn't
attic.
even born yet. This was before
Okay.
I was even born. But as we all know, when you quit using substances, you don't if you don't have an actual healing that occurs within you, you will just find something else to replace that sort of substance that you had been abusing. So for him, that became alcohol. Not much better than heroin, to be quite honest. So he became more and more of a really tormented drunk. And so as I was first growing up, I didn't see that. I didn't experience it. It seemed we were very poor, but it didn't seem so bad. But the older I got, when I was 7 or so, it started becoming more apparent to me that something was very wrong with him, and he was very disturbed. And then the fighting started, and that's very traumatizing for kids. And then things would be being broken, and he would be violent and angry, and it was terrifying. And so this is when I think a lot of my trauma started. So my household started dissolving, and then he died, and I was 11. And that was really hard, obviously, for me to deal with. I don't think I dealt with it at all, to be honest. And having already had this background of the alcoholic family structure and the abuse, none of us children were abused, but that level of torment and chaos and, the fighting, it's its own type of abuse. And it just affects you no matter what no matter what you think. That type of a household energy is not good for children. So already coming from that and then having him die was just kind of broke me. So I went from this very spiritually attuned, like I would just spend all day out with the energies of the goodness and the trees and the bushes and the animals, and I was always kind of that sort of child. And then I went from that to just hating the whole world, hating God. If I said to myself, and I said to other people, if God exists, I hate him because he did this. Why would he do this? Why would he take my father? Why would he torment my father so much? Why would he make my father a drunk and I didn't even know he was a heroin addict at that point. All of this, why would he take him from me? Why wouldn't he heal us all? And why are we poor? We were homeless after that. We didn't have a place anymore. And so it was a really, really rough time. And I also said to myself, well, love doesn't exist, because right before my father died, my mother left him, which I now understand completely, right? Like I'm an adult now, but as a child, I was like, how could you abandon this person who's so clearly broken? And that's its own thing too. But I said, well, then love doesn't exist. Love doesn't exist and God doesn't exist. And if they do, I hate them and I hate him. And then I just started doing everything I could to harm myself. I would literally cut myself. I would do all the drugs I could find. I was drinking, and I was 12 years old. I was doing acid. I was doing cocaine. I was doing crystal meth. I was smoking a lot of weed. Obviously, I was drinking. Actually, I didn't drink alcohol for a time because I blamed that my father's death on that. So there was actually a good period of time where I wouldn't drink, but I would do crystal meth. You know, that somehow made sense to me. So I went deep into addiction, and that's its own story as well. But people will ask me, like, how did you go so far into that? How did you? I mean, I was friends with people who murdered other people. You know, I was friends with people who dealt drugs to children. I was one of the children they dealt drugs to. You know, like, I was not with good people. And I was not being a good person myself. I never actually went beyond my own sort of moral code. I really just destroyed myself. But I was around the people who went beyond my moral code. And I didn't necessarily call them out for it. And so I was just in that darkness and that disconnection from the light and from myself, you know. And I was deep in that. And I often would think of suicide. I had a couple attempts-ish. They were much more cries for help than anything. I would overdose sometimes. So I had a lot of brushes with death as well. And the thing that people believe the least when I tell this story is that I maintained a 4.0 all throughout school, despite all of that. There was just something in me where I was just very dedicated, because I knew if I did survive all this and decide to go forward with life, that I would have to have a good academic, you know, background in order to achieve any kind of success in life and not live in poverty like my parents had. So, a very interesting side of my story. But
that's almost that's a miracle in itself.
It's true.
And it's a miracle on the back end of your father kicking heroin. That's a miracle.
Yeah.
And for you to maintain that during all of that at that age, pretty incredible.
Very incredible. And some of these things are part of why I eventually had to acknowledge the divinity that was working through my life all along, right? Despite me, and helping and making sure I made it through, despite that I didn't seem to want to make it through. Pretty horrible things happened to me. None of this was fun, even though I thought it was at the time. Looking back, all of it was actually really horrible. But it was all I could handle in life because I didn't know it, but I had post-traumatic stress disorder. And not just from the things I described. There was actually a very core experience I had as a child with a really sadistic dentist that was the original seed of this post-traumatic stress disorder. But if anyone knows much about post-traumatic stress disorder, I actually have developed complex post-traumatic stress disorder over time because I've had multiple traumas then build on this original trauma and re-traumatize me. And so it got really, really messy. But what I was really, really good at was dissociating. I was really good at just like stepping outside and just, you know, and I really think this is some shallow level of what we could call possession. You know, when we evacuate ourselves, there are plenty of other things that would love to take over. And I think we see this on a subtle level with anybody who's drinking. We call it spirits, right? That our spirit seems to leave us and a different one seems to step in, and we do things we would never do or say if we weren't drunk, right? And so I think we see this in various levels throughout time, but I definitely, you know, had that going on too. So I had no real ability to cope with any emotional stress. And we all know how life is. It doesn't stop adding the emotional stressors. It just keeps going. So if you haven't dealt with all the ones behind you, you're just going. And, you know, so that's how things kind of went for a while. But people ask me again, like, how did you sort of like make it through all that? And how are you the person you are now after going through all of that? And I just like to point out, just like that divinity was with me all along, whether I recognized it or not, so too was my soul, right? And it was in there somewhere. I never stopped being that little kid who wanted to connect with everything living and took joy in it and wanted to communicate with the, you know, angels and that never went away. It just was really, really distant. It was very disconnected. It was hard to connect to and remember. And honestly, it hurt too much to connect to that part because life didn't seem to like those types of energies. Life seemed a lot more catered to the negative and the dark and disconnected, and that seemed easier. So that just, it was a combination of all those things that led me down that dark road. I just want to tell a story though of the divinity that was with me all along, if you would like to hear it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I had to recognize it in the moment. It was one of those moments where I could no longer ignore that something beyond me was working for my benefit. So it was one of these times, I went back and forth. I had some friends who were they were at least less drug addicted. They maybe would drink here and there as a sort of like high school party, but they weren't really using or abusing any drugs. And
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did any of your friends that weren't as into drugs as you were ever try to stop you from being too over the top or over the edge?
Exactly.
Or did some of them not even want to be around you because they thought you're just too far gone?
No, they were constantly trying to save me, and I'm grateful for it. It actually produced many blessings in my life. And so there was times where I would try to be sober, both basically for them because they wanted me to. And I was like, well, I mean, sure, I'll try it out. I'll not use drugs for a while. I never made it that long, but in these little periods of time, I would start to feel better and start to feel emotions again and start to see that life maybe could be, and then whatever would happen and I would go back. So one of these times I went back, I had been sober for a little, probably like a week, honestly, not that long, but some cocaine rolled around and I did it. I did a lot of it. We stayed up and all night and all the next day and whatever and partied. And then as the final come down was happening, as you know, you already just go into a sort of depression. That's just the chemicals of it. But I dropped into that sort of depression and I just realized, like, God, I can't do it. I can't be sober when I choose to. If I want to be sober, why can't I be sober? Why can't I not do drugs when they present themselves? Why can't I do it? And I just started beating myself up. And it just fed into that sort of self-hatred and that dissociation. And I was like, I'm never going to make it. I can't even not do cocaine. I'm like 16 and I just can't do this anymore. And it's too much for me. And then I planned it out. And this was one of the times where it wasn't a cry for help anymore. I was going to go home and I was going to kill myself. No one was at my home. My mother wasn't there. She worked nights. My brother had moved out. He was much older than me, and he had moved, to a bigger city to go do college and that whole life. And my sister was away for the weekend somewhere. So there was no one who could stop me. And I was going to go home and take a bunch of pain pills, and I was going to cut my wrist. And I knew the right direction and depth to do that, to actually work. And I was going to sit in the tub and I was going to die. And I drove home to do that. And I drove home with that just determined will. Like, there's no going back this time. There's no point to this life anymore. You're going to do this and you're going to be dead and everything's going to be better then. I got home and there was a car in my driveway. And I was like, that's really weird. And then there was a fire out under the trees. And I was like, who is this? And then I realized it was my brother. Well, my brother he was over an hour away. And if he was ever going to come home, he would call and we would know, and it would be a thing and we would all have dinner or something, right? So he wasn't supposed to be there. And I realized it was him, and I got out of my car and I was so confused. I was like, is he even here? And I sort of walked up and he was walking out from the fire and he's like, oh, I thought you weren't supposed to be here tonight. And I was like, you weren't supposed to be here tonight. And he's like, I know, we just got the weirdest urge to come to home and have this bonfire under the trees. And a couple of his friends had come with him to come do this. And I'm not, like, it was so weird, especially because they left the city as college students to come out to like the rural area and have a bonfire on like a random, it was so bizarre. And I was like, I just kept saying to him, you're not supposed to be here. And then I just started crying and he was like, oh my God, why are you crying? And I was like, I didn't, it took me a long time. And I eventually told him I was going to come here and kill myself. And he understood. That's why we got this urge. That's why we felt so insistent we had to come here tonight and do this, because they even thought it was weird. They were like, why did we come here just to sit and have a fire? Like, why do we drive all this way? And this isn't that fun, They've done it a million times in their life. So like, why? Anyways, but that is the type of thing where I know his soul got the message, like, if you don't go, she's gone. And if you have to go and be there so that she doesn't. And that's how life worked it out. That's how God worked it out, so that I would not die that night. And it worked. I did not die that night, as you can see. And I'm just so grateful. That was one of the few times, like I said, I had some other suicidal tendencies and ideations that I didn't really act on too deeply. It really was just more like, someone please help me. Like, I'm in so much emotional pain and I don't know how to deal with it. But this time it was solid. There was no getting around it. And there is for God, though. God can pull anything off, right? So this was one of those moments where I had to acknowledge, there's something beyond this. There's something beyond me. There's something else working here, and it is for my benefit. And it wasn't the first time, and it was one of the most profound times, and one of the least, I couldn't deny it, right? It was the least deniable that this was what was happening, and that I'm blessed and loved. So kind of broke through the shell a bit. And I'm just so grateful for those types of experiences, or else I don't think I know I wouldn't be where I am today, proclaiming the spiritual truth of our lives.
So much of that I didn't know, and there's probably so much more I don't know. Did you move on from your childhood, and that just happens to be whatever that was? It is what it is, and you've moved on, or do you feel, for whatever reason, and whoever may or may not be at fault, do you feel robbed of your childhood, and do you now try to relive parts of that, or have you moved on from that? And that just happens to be the childhood that you had, and you've moved on.
I don't feel robbed. I actually had a lot of fun, and I had a lot of beautiful aspects of my childhood, and I didn't even know we were poor for years. I mean, it took a long time. I think I was like, again, like 7 or 8 or 9 or something before I realized that there was such a thing as poor, and that we were it. And it's because I had a few friends that were wildly rich, and I was just shocked at like their homes and their lifestyles, and I just didn't understand it. And I just kind of, we're very different, actually. So I had fun playing outside constantly, and in nature, and that was my childhood. I think there was a lot that was good about it. So I've never felt specifically robbed. And despite the traumas that I experienced, and this dentist original trauma, and how horrifying that was, and the other things piled on top of it, my dad dying and all of this, I look back at that now, and I have genuinely healed and genuinely integrated that. And I look at it as, perhaps like a blessing is too strong, because it really wasn't good or easy, but there's something in it that was necessary. And I am able now to help other people in large part because of these things. The only true healer is the healer that has first healed themselves, right? And so you can't heal yourself unless you have something to heal. And so I wouldn't be able to. And I remember very clearly all throughout my life having basically one goal, and the goal is to make the world a better place and to help people. And how do you do that if you haven't first made yourself a better place and helped you? And how do you do that without something to fix and something to heal? So I just look at it that way, that this was just necessary. It was what my soul chose. It was part of my soul's purpose, and part of the plan laid out by, divinity for me to accomplish what I'm accomplishing now. And, not to take away my own agency in that. I definitely worked very hard, both, in life, in the traditional ways of grades and jobs and whatnot, but also in my healing, in my personal healing. And I tell people, the hardest thing we can ever do is heal.
I can just feel all these people that didn't know you before today, that tune into my show, are wanting to know how to reach out to you. So the thing that I know for sure is your website, which is beautiful, and it's www.rogueways, all one word, .org. And I'm just going to tell people to go there and experience the website and decide what on there. I mean, you do so many things, you offer so many things on there. It's almost set up in a way that something will speak. If a person is in need of something that goes there, something on there will speak to them. And And so I'll just leave that with people to go there and check out the website and see if there's anything on there that speaks to them. But it's one thing, like, for instance, me entering the seminary, the bishop that took me under his wings told me, you especially, the devil's going to come after you. The closer you get to the priesthood, they're really going to be coming after you. And I felt it from day one. And so, do you still feel do you feel that there's something more that God hasn't shown you yet that he made sure you stayed around for? Or are you there where you think he wanted you to be, and are you happy with that? And second part of that question is the healing part. It's one thing when someone reaches out to you to be healed, and you got to make sure you're healed first. But people that are around you, having gone through what you've gone through, people that are around you that don't reach out to you for help, that may need it, are you now able to recognize the signs?
Yeah, but I've also recognized you can't help someone who's not asking, and they won't take it. They won't know it. They won't receive it. And I've also recognized you can't help someone who hasn't, in some way, found a way to give back to you. People who just think that they can take, or if we think that we can just give, that they don't actually receive it. There's just something about that. It's energetic, or it's karmic, or it's, I don't know what it is. It's very rare, I'll say. It does technically exist, but it's very rare that someone can just receive without also giving. It could be simple. It doesn't have to be money, right? It could be time, or it could be a thing that they wrote, or it can be a promise they make to help the next person that comes in. It doesn't matter what it is, but it has to be something, to be exchanged. So I can see it in nearly everyone, right? I don't see many people who are healed, to be honest. I don't see in many full adults. I see a lot of broken children who are wearing brave masks and walking around pretending like they know what's going on, and they don't. And that's what I see mostly. So to get even deeper into that, the people who are like not even pulling off the mask and they're just sort of rolling through the darkness, like that's even more obvious to me then. And again, I could reach out to them and I could show them, look, I have this light, right? You can have this light too. You are capable of doing this and healing yourself. But if they don't believe it, or they don't want it, or they don't reach out and take that light, there's nothing I could throw the light at them a million times and it'll just bounce off of them and they'll just go deeper into the darkness. So I've seen that a million times as well. I'm definitely not done yet. I'm here where I'm at, and I look at all of life as a continuous process. So I'm definitely where God meant me to be right now. But there's much more to come, much more for me to learn, much more for me to heal, much more in myself, and much more for me to accomplish in the world as well. That will never stop, and I even had some dear friends who are amazingly psychic and beautiful individuals. And one is Robert Lindsay Milne. If anybody wants a fantastic life reading, you've had Robert.
I've never had him. I know I had him when I had the radio show. I don't know if I've had him on this podcast yet. I'll have to look. But he's great.
He is great. And he is one of the many psychics who picked up on a few things in my future. But one of them that I didn't expect was he was like, oh, you're not going to die until you're 97. Well, I'm 40 right now, and it feels like I've lived 7 lifetimes. So I'm not even halfway done yet. So when you say, is there going to be more? Are you where you're supposed to be? I'm like, apparently I'm not even halfway through this thing, which is, in some ways, it's a lot for me. In some ways I was like, God, like, don't I get a break? Like, can't I come home for a little while? No, not yet. So that's apparently going to happen. But I also, when you're talking about the devil's going to come challenge you, and he's going to see you coming to build this light, and that's not what he wants in the world. He's going to attempt to sort of put that light out or dissuade you from bringing the light. That's been a constant part of my life since way back then in those days. And it still goes on today in many ways. So I'm not a stranger.
How do you combat that?
to that. I actually literally have a list right next to me. because I need it. I have to keep it present in my mind, even after all I've been through, even after all the divinity I know, even how strong my faith is, even how many times I've seen the light work. I still have to remind myself to connect to it intentionally. And so I have a list right here that is it's called the Remember the Love list. And it's all the things I can do when I am being targeted by that energy, and it's just throwing roadblocks in my way, and it's just pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. I have all of these things I can choose to do, and prayer is one of those things that is very effective, but there's a whole lot more on that list. And I tell people this, like, this is a choice we make. I don't get to choose whether or not that energy tries to attack me or affect me, but I do get to choose what I do. And what I choose to do in the face of that is connect to the light even better, even more often, even more frequently, even more deeply. And just, you're just pushing me to be stronger.
Without getting too, I know I could easily flip the switch, and you and I could get really super
Dark.
deep and dark and controversial, conspiracy theory, all that sort of stuff. And the reason why I don't do that anymore, the couple of great guests I had on that are world class conspiracy theorists, those episodes got taken down by both YouTube and Facebook. So, and it was a bummer because I don't want people to not see the shows. So I try not to get too into that. But as you were talking about that, I'm thinking about the crazy pandemic. And I'd never gone through anything like that before in my life. And I thank God that my parents had already gone to heaven before because had they been and they both, the last year of my father's life and the last couple of years of my mother's life, they spent in assisted living. And I know that would have been brutal for not only me, my brother, my sisters to not be able to go see them during that, but I know it would have been brutal and very confusing and horrifying for them if they had gotten sick and died in there all alone. And then all those people that were, buried in mass graves on the East Coast, the elderly, because of the pandemic that died. But the flip side of that coin, children that are in school during all of that ended up not going to school, and then when they were about to, allowed to go back to school, the whole mask thing and the vaccines and all that, they went through things that I look back to I could be totally off base here, but I look back at myself at that age, junior high, elementary, junior high school, even high school. If I had to have gone through all of that, I don't know how I would have came through it. And do you feel that we are many, many years from now, we are going to be up close and personal with this extremely broken generation?
Well, we know for sure that hiding the faces of adults from infants, toddlers, and young children, and especially covering their face if anyone chose that route, creates psychopathy. We know that for sure. It creates an inability to understand human emotion. It creates an inability to feel other people's feelings, which we call empathy. It creates a far greater likelihood that there will be no sympathy in that child's life. That creates psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism, and borderline personality disorder. So we know that for sure. We have increased the chances of those pretty dark energies existing in a much higher quantity than they had previously been. So that's a really unfortunate side effect of people choosing this for themselves and their children. That's undoable. You can't undo that. That time period that they are receiving that information from facial cues that informs them about human emotion is gone. So you can try your best to teach it and you can try your best to instill it, and it's possible they get it, but it's very unlikely. So that's definitely true. The other thing I see, however, and this is true with everything the darkness does, and I've just received some beautiful messages through my own spiritual channels about this, reconfirming this truth. Even that is part of, we could say, God's plan. And it's not, and I know people take that the wrong way almost 100% of the time. It's said like, why would God plan for this? God is evil then. No, what it's saying is you can't stop the people who chose this. Right? You cannot stop them from choosing and do it. They have free will too. But what God can do, because God is great enough, what our souls can do, because they are great enough, is weave that into something that becomes something more beautiful anyway. You can use, just like, is it Aikido? You use your opponent's movements and energy against them. It's the same thing. It's the same way of looking at it. And I know kids, because I was a teacher for 14 years, high school and middle school especially, and those kids will take these sorts of experiences and they will turn them into something we never could have imagined. They're so creative, they're so amazing, their souls are so resilient. And while it may seem that a lot of them are giving up and giving into this, and that will happen too, there's going to be so many that also respond to it in ways we just couldn't even imagine, that are so genius and beautiful, and they will use it to create something even better. So I have faith in the human spirit in that way. I'm not saying we aren't going to also experience an uptick in some pretty dark negativity in a lot of those kids too, but we're going to see exactly the opposite as well. And we're going to see this used to create good despite evil's desires.
You mentioned some of the things you went through, you felt were forms of possession. Everywhere you look now, the violence is off the charts everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go. And I know people that don't even go out. I'm not scared to go out, but I go out. I have a part-time job at an animal hospital during the week if they call me in. But when I don't do that, I'm here studying, helping people online. I got online students. But I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I don't go out like I used to watch a football game or hang out with friends for dinner. I don't drink anymore, but they could drink and I would be fine with it, a Diet Coke. But I don't go out to the movies or restaurants or anything. And I'm not conscious about it, but I think it's not only the pandemic thing, but I think that I can't help but somewhere in my mind, I'm logging, seeing all this violence and these people being attacked and the elderly people being attacked, and just the violence seems to be off the charts. In your circle of friends, you know a lot of very highly spiritual people. You're a highly spiritual person, and you do healing and all that. In your circles, do you hear that the cavalry's on the way and we're going to get through this okay? And for everybody just to take a deep breath and calm down? Or do you think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better?
I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. One of the experiences I share somewhat frequently, just because of how incredibly profound it was and what a gift it was, is a time when Sai Baba, I don't know if anyone knows who Sai Baba is. There's multiple Sai Babas actually, but this Sai Baba is the one that James Dean knew, and who was popularized therefore through some Hollywood channels, which was probably a great thing for many people. But he is one of these divine beings, who gets to be on Earth for a time. I didn't know anything about him at all. Literally, I'd never even heard his name. And I was in a very unintended, for me, discussion about reflexology in this very random event that I just so happened to be at, that I would have never gone to, but just ended up at. So I was sitting in this room with some people listening to this man about reflexology. There's so much more detached to this story, but I'm just going to share this part. So I have seen frequently in my life what people might call orbs of energy, and their beings often, and sometimes I can communicate with them, and this has been a frequent part of my life. Well, I don't usually have those happen in front of a bunch of strangers, but in this moment, an orb came through the wall and was hovering around for a moment, and I noticed it, and I was like, whoa, I was not prepared for this to happen in a group of strangers. I don't even know if it's there for me or whatnot, or what's going on. I don't know if they see it. I don't know if everyone here is just so spiritual that they're just like, yeah, orbs come through the walls. Like, that's what happens, right? Yeah. Or if this is just, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. And then it plops into the speaker's head. And he sort of shakes and his mannerisms all change. And he starts talking as though he's reading scripture, is what it sounds and feels like. And the content of the message was something like, the darkness is coming. The times are going to get harder. It will start in 2022 and it will become darker and darker after that. And this period of darkness will last and get worse and worse until 2033, when I will return to you and be here with you again on earth. But don't worry, I will never have left you that whole time. I live in your heart. This Christ consciousness is within you. You carry it through that darkness, and that is the point. And so 2033, this Christ consciousness will return and things will all be very different in a very positive way. And then the ball left his head and he shook his head and he said, that wasn't me, that was Sai Baba. And then he just carried on with the discussion like nothing happened. I was like,
Wow.
what just happened? So
Well, when you were telling that story, I almost started crying.
yeah,
It's
I started
and I didn't get the
crying.
sense that that's the end of the world in
No,
2033.
no,
A lot of
it's
people
the
think when
return of,
Christ returns,
yeah,
that's going to be it. And I'm on the fence. I mean, it could be end of times, but then again, I think God has too much invested in us for end of times to come like that.
yeah.
And I believe there may be many returns of Christ that way before it's finally, the world's done. But
Christ can return through you at any moment
yeah,
because you just know that he lives in your heart and that this energy is true and that you choose to be aligned with it. And that's what he was basically saying, right? This time is dark. And he was right on. This was in like I want to say 2018 or 2019. And 2022 came and I was like, yep, here we are. He was
yep.
absolutely right. Things are getting openly
Oh my gosh, is it all?
disgusting. Yeah.
I can't believe the show is almost over.
Ah.
You know what? I keep saying every time I have someone like you on, I always say that I'm going to have to really think about, having a longer show. The hour's just not long enough. But
It just flies by.
my co-producers have a life. They're newlyweds right now, and they also have a life.
Congratulations.
And who wants to who wants to produce me for more than an hour at a time, a couple of
Oh.
times? Anyway, oh my gosh, I love you and I respect you, and I'm so glad that you came to hang out. Real quick before I say goodbye to you, is there anything that you are of all the things you do? I mean, and everybody that goes to check out your website, www.rogueways.org. Oh, the show. When's the show, real quick? When can people listen to the Rogue Ways?
Yes, Rogueways is on Sundays and Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Mountain. I live stream it to YouTube and Rockfin, rockfin.com/rogueways. On Thursdays, I do a Rockfin supporter only show. It's called Middle Path. It's my more spiritual teaching and guidance sort of show. And that's at the same time, 7 p.m. Mountain. But you do have to be a supporter to access it. And if you're a podcast only sort of person, I also have that audio only exclusives on Apple Podcast. But this Sunday, the 18th, I have an event that I do that's called One Day of Brightness. And it's meant to bring in more of these Christ-like and beautiful divine energies and really align with them. I do it every solstice and equinox. And so this is for the fall solstice. It's a celebration. We get messages and energies from our guides and allies in heaven and of source, and we create a field, and we all heal, sometimes physically, sometimes economically, sometimes emotionally. We really create that for each other. And then we also get to learn really direct application of some of this knowledge that can help us in our lives. So this time we have an acupuncturist who's going to help us learn our own acupuncture points that can be really helpful and how to work with them without having to pay an acupuncturist, which is really helpful. And then we have an astrologist who's going to help us interpret some of the aspects of our natal charts that a lot of astrologers don't ever really touch on. And so we get our own personal cosmology a little bit better, more filled out. So it's going to be a really cool, powerful day. It's always really powerful. There are tickets left. So if people want to go to rogueways.org and go to the shop, you can find One Day of Brightness pretty close to the top, and you can buy a ticket to that. That's this Sunday. It is a Zoom, so it doesn't matter where in the world you are. And it is also recorded. So, if there's a part of that day you're like, oh, I can't be there for that, you'll get the recording of it. So you'll still be with us, even if you can't be there right at the time. But yeah, rogueways.org has everything else, my books, the orgone that I make, and all kinds of good stuff.
I saw you had a new book.
Yeah, I have the book, The Key of Transformational Healing, as well. That's a direct channeling from those orbs of light on some of those spiritual channels and their messages to us. It's a really profound and deep, tiny, short little read. It's like 70 pages, and it's really powerful. So I would love for anyone to grab that. And any of the other books, they're all on the site as well.
Well, God bless you. You've been on my prayer list from the first time we met, and so I pray for you all the time. And I just think you're really cool. And is there, in just the last couple of minutes I have, everybody's got a favorite thing they like to do, even if they do several things very good. Is there any form of shamanic practice or healing techniques or anything that you offer on your website that you really personally enjoy doing?
Yes. I mean, I really love doing them all. I'm really blessed to be able to do them. And they're all so cool. But um, I guess definitely my favorites are the guidance session. The guidance session can be so healing and powerful. The healing ceremony and session I offer is it's a lot deeper, it's a lot more profound, and it's also therefore a lot more expensive, and not everyone can afford that. But I have had people do guidance sessions that get the level of healing that is usually reserved for something like a healing ceremony. And this is what I tell people: I'm not actually even in charge. I can't say to you, you will receive this amount of healing from this thing we do together. I just know you'll receive exactly what you need and what your soul is ready for and what God is ready to give you. I'm amazed sometimes at what comes through guidance sessions, because otherwise, they're a time to receive some messages from source that will help you along your path. And we talk through some of those things and that, but sometimes what comes through is really transformative and profound. So I really love those for that reason. They're very broad. They're very powerful in their own different ways every time. So I love being able to do the guidance sessions with people.
Well, I have to ask, did you have fun when you come back?
I did have fun, and I would absolutely come back. Thank you, Shawn.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for hanging out. I know you're a very busy person. I got to get you back on here before the end of the year. Like you're such a holidays time type person. I'm
Thank you.
feeling to want to bring you back around. Then I'll reach out to you. But stay blessed. Have a wonderful remainder of your Friday evening, and thank you so much. And I'll be in touch.
You too. Thanks, Shawn.
I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye bye. You're welcome. If you want a little more God in your life, and who doesn't need a little more God in their life, the United States Old Catholic Church has night prayer every night, Monday through Friday, during the week that is, Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific. And I always have the link on my personal Facebook page. You can go to Bishop James Long's personal Facebook page. He always has the link there. And you can go to the USOCC Facebook page. The link's usually always there. But it's night prayer at 7 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday. It's wonderful. You'll enjoy it. Also, Bishop James Long of the USOCC has Bible study every Wednesday afternoon and Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. Pacific. And that is really a good time too. So, and I always have the links to Bible study on Wednesday and Sundays on my personal Facebook page too. So, check that out if you're feeling the need to get a little more God in your life. I will be here next week, or actually this Monday. Oh, I don't even have to look, but I'm going to look anyway because I know who's going to be here, and you're going to love her, and I know you guys already love her. This Monday, the 19th, back by extreme popular demand, psychic artist Angela Bowley will be here, and she sent me a bunch of her new psychic paintings. We're going to put them up on the screen. Zach, my producer, will put them up on the screens. Angela will give the backstory on them and tell how that psychic energy came through her and allowed her to paint that particular portrait. It's gonna be a really good show. So that's this Monday. I want to thank Zach and Adrian Clayton, the newlyweds, my co-producers, for producing my show because I couldn't do it without them. I want to thank Things Network. I want to thank Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment. I want to thank Skeleton Key Network and Pact. Little P, capital ACT. Pact. Podcasting for All Coming Together channel. All for simulcasting my show. And when you get a chance, check out the Pact channel. Every podcast on there is somebody who loves to just do good things for other people. So that's a really good channel. That's Zach's channel. So check that out. Um, what else do I want to say other than thank you all for being here? Because, like I said earlier, I don't have a show without you guys. So God bless you all. And it's bad joke time. A bad joke that one of you sent in that I give you guys at the end of the show to try to put a smile on everybody's face. How does a penguin put his house together? He igloos it together. Good night, Danny. Good night, dog. Good night, Jack. Good night, Harold. Rest in peace. Good night, Ernie. Good night, Bill. Good night, Dan. God bless you all. I love you all. Peace.